Tell me when we're live.
Good morning.
This group's just having way too much fun. You're all set, Ken.
All set. Well, thank you, everybody, and welcome to the Town Council Communications Committee meeting of June 29th, 2021. And for that, I call this meeting to order. Second item on the second item on the agenda is roll call. Tracy, do a roll call.
Councilor Anderson,
Here.
Councilor Katarina,
Here.
Councilor Johnson.
I'm here. I'm glad you got the email, John. You didn't show up. Somebody, you can see
Unlike
that
some of
I
us.
see that.
EMS, somebody tied to his hip over there.
She looks like she's in like the naughty chair, kind of sitting behind.
She should be.
That's where I belong.
Okay, item number 3 is the approval of the May 24th, 2021 meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Tracy?
Councilor Anderson,
Yes.
Councilor Katarina,
Yes.
Councilor Johnson.
Yes, thank
Thank
you
you.
very much. Item number 4 is the discussion on the community survey RFP responses. Just for a little bit of the record, the communication committee, working with the staff and supported by the council, have decided that the town of Scarborough is going to be doing a community-wide survey sometime this fall. And the decision was made to do an outside vendor, somebody that is an expert in doing surveys and not to try to do homegrown. So those decisions have been made, and we've gone out for an RFP, a request for proposal, to different vendors that do this. And we have received 3 back, and I'm going to let Mr. Liam tee that up.
Sure. So this is a pretty good segue. We did put out an RFP. Responses were due by Friday the 25th. We received 3 proposals back. The quotes range anywhere from about $21,500 to upwards of $38,000. If you recall, we have about $20,000 in the budget between FY21 and FY22 funding. The responses, there was a proposal from sort of a joint venture from a Massachusetts firm and a more local Portland contact, and then there's a proposal from a Portland firm, and then there's one that was based out of Kansas, I believe. The responses, kind of interestingly, and we'll kind of get into this, but 2 of the proposals suggested a $500 or $600 sampling size, sort of a statistically viable sampling of towns or of town residents, whereas one I think was proposing more like a 5,000 person target. So I think those are some things that stood out to me. But that's, I think, kind of where we stand. I think it'd be interesting to have a discussion tonight about what we would like to do for next steps. Hopefully there's some consensus on selecting a vendor, and then we can enter into discussions about what that scope of work will actually look like, and see if we can't come to terms on something that's closer to our budget.
Right. Thank you, Liam. And having said that, I appreciate the efforts going out. We did receive up to 3, I think, kind of, and I guess they came in a little late. That could be the mail responsibility. So we did get some pretty extensive proposals from 3, very credible sources that, to me, all looked, again, very capable and for what we wanted to do. So last night I read through the 3, and I have some thoughts that I want to just throw out there and then have a general discussion on the committee members, because I'm not sure how much time you had to put into it. Back to what Liam said, right? We have $20,000 in the budget. Unfortunately, everybody came in over that, but that's okay. I think there's some wiggle room in there, and maybe that's the next steps that we can talk in a minute. So this is what I captured just to group it up. We have market decisions out of Portland. And those folks are the same folks that did our 1990 and our 1999 community survey. So, but they were also purchased in the year 2000. So I think it was after they did our last community-wide survey that fed into our growth and services report, which was actually very valuable for the town council in policy decisions that followed that report. The second one was VHM Qualitative. They're out of Portland. Also, I think that might be the relationship between the Massachusetts and the Portland group. And the third was the ETC Institution, and they're out of Kansas. So what I did was I just parsed through the highlighted items to number one, get a sense. And again, they're all capable. I mean, they give a resume of each director or project manager that will be involved in this endeavor, directly with the staff and the town council committee and the town council. But this is the commonality that I found, that the total time from time of initiation after we choose the vendor is roughly 14 weeks. One's 15 weeks, one's 12 weeks, one's 12 to 14 weeks. That includes designing the survey with some iterations back and forth with this committee and the town council, then sampling the survey. Some have a reminder email of after we go out for the sampling. Then they do the analysis of the results of the survey, and then the output, the survey, and then the cost. And again, I saw the cost. One is VHM Qualitative out of Portland, which I think is the Massachusetts collaboration. Unfortunately, I thought they were good, but their cost, I think, is so far over our budget. I don't know if we can do anything. It's $32,000, all right? Market design was $27,400, which is a little disappointing to me. And ETC out of Kansas was $21,900. So again, all over, but I think there's some wiggle room in there, which I hope is some next steps, because awful lot of this is labor intensive, which would be the design, and then the implementation being the postage and whatnot. All, of course, using their preferred vendors, and we all know about vendors. They all have their own little upcharge because they have to make money on the transaction also. So there might be some wiggle room in there to have a discussion. One of the key highlights that I liked on the market decisions out of Portland, that they were 5,000 on their sampling. And they actually did a follow-up postcard reminder email. So you figure that's 5,000, but with 2 mails. So there may be some room in there for discussion. VMH was N equal 500. And I wasn't quite sure what that meant, the N equal. I didn't know if that meant per 10,000, per 5,000 or what. I thought maybe Liam might be able to help me understand that. And the one out of Kansas, again, very still robust, but their sampling is 600. And however, that firm, ETC, also did a community compare. They would, at the end of the result, they would compare our community to national communities that they do. And they also did GIS mapping. So we could see the results on a GIS map of the town of Scarborough, which would be interesting to see what kind of sentiments are in what part of the town, which was great. I thought the market and ETC both did mail and online, where VMH was only online and interviewing. So it was a little bit like, what was it? It wasn't Portico. It was
Polko.
Which one was it?
Polko.
Polko, right. Very robust, but again, just online. And you know our demographics, we're 20% over 60. Awful lot of folks don't have online. I hear it all the time. So again, those are just some of the things that I saw in my couple hours of trying to look at this and condense it. And I thought I'd maybe just state those and then open it to discussions on general feedback from other people.
Ken, that VMH one, actually, they're doing phone interviewing, and they're gonna do it for people who don't have the access to online.
Right,
And I know just enough about surveying to be dangerous. Having studied surveying in a past life, and used it in, various jobs and whatever I've had. I don't think you need 5,000 people to get a good scientific survey. I know they came up with that 500 for a reason, because I think that that's got, the right confidence intervals and whatever in it, margin of error. But I kind of like the sitting down and talking to people directly. I was a little surprised, and I suppose because of COVID, they didn't have a group, put together a group and then talk to them too. But that may be a little more in depth, more like a marketing type of a type of thing that's done. But anyway, I just wanted to let you know that VMH does have something for people who don't have access to computers.
and I agree with that. I'm not sure how they determine if you have a computer or not, to tell you the truth, because they drive off our registered voter list, which is
They may
clean.
make phone calls too. I didn't look that closely. Usually in these things, you may send out a mailer, follow up with a phone call if you have access to phone or email,
Right.
to try to get the people in your list. Because part of driving that 500 is also driven by who responds to your request.
Right.
And you make note of how many people refused too.
Right.
That's part of, your statistical sampling. Well, we had, we reached out to 700 people and 500 of them told us to pound sand. Well, that tells you something too. So not that would happen, but.
And again, I hear you. And again, I'm only one out of the committee and one out of the 7 or 6, whatever it is, on the council. But I also feel that I pretty much understand our demographics in our town. And just for me, doesn't mean it's going to go anywhere, is the town needs to feel like they're involved in this survey.
Right.
If we tell them 500 people were involved, the initial reaction is, well, I wasn't one of them. So that's just my thought process on it.
You talk to the wrong people, Ken.
So can I thought though, when I read each of these, even the first one, MDR, I think while they're going to sample 5,000, they're still only targeting a 600 response rate. So they're not necessarily saying that they're going to push to get 5,000 responses. They're saying they're going to reach out to 5,000 folks through various methods and ultimately get 600, which will give them the sample size they need to provide a significant or statistically significant
Correct.
assessment. And same thing for VMH. They were targeting 500, which again, they're the only ones that targeted 500, but ETC also said they were going to get 600 responses. So I think all of them are kind of saying their goal for a successful launch of this would be to get at least
500.
500 to 600, which doesn't mean we won't get more.
Right.
So just to share my view on these, like when I looked at each of the 3, I was kind of looking at it from a cost, a methodology, and an experience perspective to kind of help me narrow in on which one I felt like was best suited. Trying to put the history behind about MDR in the past, just knowing that that could maybe cloud judgment. They came out on top for me, partially because they were the middle of the pack in terms of cost. I think from a methodology perspective, they were the most, at least detailed in their write-up in terms of what they would do and how they would partner with us in terms of reaching folks. So I think they had the most robust approach, it seemed like, to try and make sure they're reaching the most people through the most methods to get them to want to participate. And then I just was really impressed with their overall experience, where clearly with all the projects they listed, they have probably, compared to the other 2, more experience doing this type of survey with our particular focus around municipal government. So that's kind of why they jumped out as number 1. Number 2 was ETC for me, because again, they were the cheapest, which I thought was great. Same things you mentioned, the GIS mapping, that's kind of like really interesting ways to report out the results. The thing that gave me a little pause though with that one was they were mostly focused on mail and email. And I don't think we have emails that we could provide them so that they could do what they want to do. So I don't even know if their methodology would work, because I think they're assuming we have email contact information for all the residents, which I
Right.
think we're pretty limited, right? We only have probably what we have through our e-news
Yeah,
is,
and it's not associated with an address, which is what they
Yeah.
wanted as a follow-up.
Right.
yeah. So I think
Right.
their approach is very flawed if that's what they're holding
So
us
which
to.
one was that, John? I'm sorry, which one was that?
That was ETC.
And so the
Institute.
first one that you were speaking of that you were impressed with was what, VHM?
The market decision research.
Oh, okay, because
They were my
okay.
they
yeah.
were my number one. And then VMH, like you, or VHM, I don't remember what the acronym was. I too just kind of said, based on their cost and based on what they put in their proposal, I just don't think they were even close to the other two. And so I would have liked to have seen them maybe put a better foot forward in their proposal.
Right.
I thought, the other two did a much better job from my view. So
Right.
I think, and I agree with you with MDR, if they're trying to do two mailers, essentially a letter and a postcard, maybe we get by with one, and that
Right.
could save some costs, which could get us closer to that 20,000.
Right.
That might be a way to kind of generate some savings. One idea I had though, as I was looking through this and looking at the timelines, and I'm just throwing this out to you and Jean Marie and others to think about, is the timing of these might actually be kind of close to the election. And so does some sort of exit polling at the election serve as another mechanism to get some feedback? I don't know if that would have an issue from a sampling perspective to keep the results pure, because you're just kind of getting the voters. And then just again, looking at the last election, I guess I'm a little concerned if we hung our hat too much on that, we're not going to get the turnout
Right.
Yeah,
and participation. But it's another means to get more participation.
Right.
And if
but
we're
it's not,
flexible,
but it's not scientific, so it would spoil the result, in my opinion. I will tell you that market decisions research,
MDR.
I'm familiar with their work from a number of different places, and they do an excellent job. My second was the VMH, and part of it was because it's a woman owned. I'm biased there, okay? And she went to the University of Chicago, so that's bias number 2. Because I knew that, because I know the programs at the University of Chicago are superb. In at the Harris School, I assume she went to the Harris School. I shouldn't assume, but seeing that she has an MA and not an MBA, they're like top for
Right.
surveys and statistical stuff from a sociological point of view. But that being said, I wasn't even looking at the price. It's interesting because I just figured what we would do is look at who we think packages the best and does the closest to what we want. Then you can go back and try to negotiate or say, look, we appreciate this. You gave us this price. Our limit is, and I would like to think that we could get more than just 20,000, that we could shake out some more money somewhere, but who am I?
Right.
And see what they come back with after we've identified, at least 2. I will tell you, ETC, again, this is a bias thing. They're Midwest. They're, I don't know. I was like, nah, that one I wasn't even interested in. So there you go.
So let's try to narrow it down just a little bit to probably maybe ETC. John, I sense that you felt the same way about ETC. So did I, actually. The remaining 2, MDR and VHM, it truly was a cost for me. But again, let me just share my thoughts, and they're only my thoughts, is everything in here, I'm sure it's labor intensive, even though this is what they do. They have a lot of stuff they can pull out. It's still labor intensive. The design for market decisions and VHM was pretty similar, 6 weeks versus 4 weeks. But if you look at what we did in 1990 and 1999, probably about 80% of those questions are still relevant today, which would remove, in my mind, design time for 80% of what we want. It's the 20% that's new, that's relevant now, that wasn't back then, is where the time could be, that could maybe shave down that 6 weeks to 4 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever, again, from a cost savings perspective. Although I do agree with, we can always go back to VHM and try to negotiate something. I think we have a little bit more leverage on MDR, but while we're talking, Liam, you're hearing us talking. What are your thoughts? What are your thinking?
The only thing I would say about, I also was initially impressed with kind of opening for VMH. Again, I like their background and some of their approach. I think the thing that gives me pause about VMH beyond the cost is that they really didn't cite any municipal survey experience. Maybe I overlooked it. They seem to have some pretty wide-ranging experience in the private sector and a lot of different surveying, and they're obviously capable. But the other two firms had specific municipal survey experience. And so I would think that the learning curve and bringing that to bear right out of the gate might be helpful. Yeah. So I think, for me, MDR, with their kind of background and familiarity on some level with Scarborough being local, being kind of in the middle on the price point, they were sort of where I was gravitating towards.
Yeah. In my discussions with the gentleman I had one, just to let the committee members know, I had one discussion with the MDR folks, months ago. After I read the services report, I saw their name, I called them and wanted to see if they even still existed. The gentleman I talked to, I do not recall his name, but he was very pleasant, told me that he was involved in the last Scarborough, and that yes, they did still have all the artifacts from that endeavor. So again, that's what I was thinking about, leveraging what was maybe there. They are kind of like real local. They're in Portland. So that's where my bias is. And I really thought with them, the threshold from 2027 is a little bit more manageable, I think, with some discussions than from 20 to 32 on VHM. That's all.
Yeah. I just have so one thing that I read that I found interesting, I think it was ETC that pointed it out, was how phone calling isn't effective, and that really was VMH's a key strategy for them. So I'm just curious, and maybe Jean Marie, because I know you probably from a you might have experience like for politics and the Democrat committee doing phone calls. Do you find that to be a very successful method for reaching people? Are people not picking up?
No. And of course, when I'm making phone calls, it's different. When you're doing surveying of people or trying to get, response, other than political surveys, you really want to make it a multi-pronged, trying to get people to get back to you. So usually what you do is, if you want your N number to be 500, more or less, you may go out to 1,000 in the hopes of getting at least N. But you don't need to do 5,000. That's why when I saw the one from, I think it was ETC, 5,000, I'm like, what?
Right.
So that's why I liked that VMH was thinking about, people who might not use online surveys and had that in their proposal, because I don't think MDR called that out. And I just wonder, is it cheaper to do, phone surveys versus sending out a mailer? Like, is there a cost difference?
Oh, it is. Oh, it's way easier to go down through a phone list and keep dialing. But are you getting who you want? But I have to admit, I didn't look as closely at MDRs just because I'm familiar with them.
So let me share one more thing that, again, only in my research with MDR, and I know it looks like I'm leaning to MDR. Well, I'll be honest, I am, only because of my conversations. Because what they did, which anybody would do, they either go to our voter registration and they go to, for addressing, they go to our assessor. Okay. Awful lot in Scarborough, the assessor only has the building owner.
Right.
MDR actually came into the town of Scarborough, went to the buildings and got the physical address. Right? And at that time, I was living in Coach Lantern. So the assessor has the building I was living in because that's where the tax bill goes. They didn't know the 4 individual families that lived in that building. And that's what MDR did. They went out and they got the addresses. And they went out to 6,500 at that time, 6,500 homes in a mailing. And they got 39% response. So you think about that. If we could even come close to that, I think everybody would be thrilled. But that's, again, why I lean to MDR. I like their methods, their approach. Now, granted, that's before they were purchased by somebody else. I
Yeah,
don't
but
know.
they were purchased a while ago, weren't they?
Yeah, in 2000.
Yeah, so I'm
Yeah.
familiar with their work since then. They
Oh,
still
yeah.
are top of line
Yeah.
for what they do.
It's just when they did those mechanics for the town of Scarborough was 1999. That's all I'm, trying to be transparent with it. But I did like that approach because I minored in statistics. I understand the value of statistics. I would never doubt statistics. I am just benchmarking that against the people that I know in this town that want to feel like they were involved in the survey.
Well, doesn't it sound like they're doing the opposite though, because it's online only. They're only doing it online. The only mailings that are arriving to them have the link for the online survey. But it did say that there's something in there, like if you want a print copy, you can request one, or there would be a stack of them at town hall or at the library.
NPR? Is that what?
Yeah.
I did not read that.
Yeah,
with
theirs
NPR.
is the only one that said online only, but there is a print option available. It's just
I'll
not
have to
mailed
go
to
back
you.
and see. That's what happens when you only have a short time to read that. Because I read it this way. Maybe I'm blending, what they did initially was that it was a 6-page mailing to the homes. So I'll have to go back and refactor that. Because you're right, I would not be in favor of an online only because our demographics are too many people do not have online.
Right.
So I think that should probably be one of the discussions that if we decide that all things being equal, move forward with discussing a contract with MDR. If you recall, I guess just 2 quick points. When we met with, and again, I know this is a select group, Ken and Allison, when we met with USM, some representatives from the Cutler Institute, one of their comments was, at least during COVID, they actually saw a much higher response rate to mailed surveying than they had emails.
Right.
That's true.
People were home and they're inundated with emails all the time, and so that was sort of a unique phenomenon that they had observed. About. The other thing I just want to point out in terms of the responses, we did get. I'm not sure if I include this in any of the communications I'd sent out to the committee, but we did actually hear from 2 or 3 other, or 3 or 4 possibly other firms that we had reached out to, who just said that they did not have the capacity or the bandwidth to support. So there were some other people in the mix with the internet, but this is the 3 we got. So just
thanks for sharing that. Yep.
I want to throw in just a couple of my notes too. I just want to play devil's advocate on the ETC Institute one in Kansas. I know it's the only one that wasn't local or Maine based, but my takeaway from that was how much they emphasized the results of it. And I didn't really see that from the other ones. They were so focused on the methodology for getting it. But I was just curious, just thinking, what are we going to do next? Once we get all the results, what is it going to be used for? And if we're really relying on these results, it would be interesting that they're talking about the GIS map. And I really tried to understand what that importance satisfaction rating was. And I just found that interesting as a way of ranking it. It's balancing what people find the most important topics in town versus how satisfied they are with them, and that helps rank it. And the other ones didn't really talk about that aspect as much, about what they're asking. So it's a matter of if we want it to be the same that it's been the past couple decades of how we ask the questions, and that's good because we can compare it back to our own results. But if we want to compare it to other municipalities, it might be interesting to go with that
That's
candidate.
correct. It's a good point.
And I would just add to Allison, you know, the other strength of theirs that kind of had me waffling between them and MDR was their benchmarking capability. Because I think, to your point, thinking about action, like maybe one of our services is ranked really low from a satisfaction perspective, but if we look across other municipalities, maybe that's common.
Yeah.
And we're actually scoring relatively high in that area. Like, it's probably fair to compare community services to community services or parks and recs across than to just look at it from the Scarborough lens. So I do think that's going to make it much more actionable, because we could look at these results and see, okay, how did we score? How did we score relative to similar services in other towns? And are we like significantly weak in one area and we need to figure out how we get better, or are we, you know, still low but really, really good from a comparison perspective? So that's the one thing that they had to around that results theme that I think is going to be very useful in terms of what we do as next steps, which again was
Well,
lacking in the other ones.
and ETC, my only concern with that with ETC is, have they done New England towns?
Have they what?
Done New England towns, because municipality and the role of municipalities is very different
Right.
in New England and Maine than it is from the Midwest, to be honest with you. So,
Well, that's a good question, and maybe out of the result out of this meeting is that we pare it down to 2,
Mhm.
right? And then with some next steps. So,
Just one more thought too on the comparison between the two main ones. I thought the MDR one was really good, and it just seemed very like cookie cutter to me, like very template, that's how they do it for other towns. Like I saw they did Cumberland and Falmouth recently.
Yep.
The VMH one, it looked like they did a little more of like adding in more like Scarborough elements, and it had a little more personal connection there. And they were the only ones that talked about an incentive for completing it, that it would be like 10 people would get like $100 or something like that. And I thought
but who pays for that? Come on, when I read that, I said, on us. Well, yeah, of course it's on us, because you just billed me.
Yeah,
So come on.
yeah.
But I like the idea.
Yeah, but I did lean more towards MDR just after seeing the total cost of the two of them. They seemed relatively similar, and I was like, oh, that's a huge.
So your 2 was what, Allison? MDR
and ETC.
ETC.
Depending on, do we want a main company and one that we've worked with in the past, or do we want to go with the results driven?
Okay. All right. Yeah, and again, I think back to somebody's point, the end result, because that was another category I had, what do you get? And of course, we'd get the standard report and some presentation. But the data set is important to me, because we have John Clucci. And John Clucci can put this in, Tableau or something. We can parse this stuff inside and out forever until he's gone. So definitely got to have the raw data. We did not get that with our prior, to my understanding, with our prior surveys, the 3 that we've had in the last 30 years. We did not get the raw data. So.
yeah, they don't always, that's something that you could ask them about that you specifically want, because they kind of own that data. It's proprietary sometimes, so you got to ask them about it.
Right. So why don't we, Liam, if you don't object, I mean, I would think that maybe we should take a vote to parse it to 2, and then come up with next steps related to those 2 to get it down to 1.
Sure.
So does everybody agree with that, temperature wise?
Yeah, what's your next step going to be if you've got 2?
I think we should distill down some of the questions we have about the proposals. You know, again, ETC, I think when they're talking about comparative data, I think that they had talked about roughly 80 communities that they had done work in. Well, give me the breakdown of those communities, because I don't know if 40 of those communities are communities over 80,000 people. Well, I'm not sure how well that translates, and so
they're out in Iowa.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And
So
that they're
again,
relying on emails for distribution. I just don't know if we could do that, like John said.
So right, I kind of look at that as the second step, right? We remove 1, we get 2, and then we get into discussion maybe with the next two. In the meantime, we have a little bit more time to digest the information that we got yesterday or the day before and come up with some good questions for both, whatever the two are. So I'm going to suggest that we narrow it to two initially and then discuss next steps. Okay, so I'm just taking the shake of heads as affirmative. And so I'm going to just make a quasi motion that we go with MDR and ETC and eliminate VMH. I'd see a yes on Mr. Anderson and a no on Liam Gallagher. Do you know you are Liam Gallagher, right?
No, I'm not.
Oh, that's right. You're on his Zoom.
I mean,
Liam Gallagher
I would go with
Junior.
MDH. I would go with MDH, but I like VMH better, but there you go.
Okay. So then I guess we're gonna make a formal motion and a vote.
Right.
So I'm gonna bring forward a motion to, out of the 3 vendors supplied, we narrow the 3 vendors to 2 vendors, one being Market Decisions out of Portland and the other being ETC Institution out of Kansas. Do I have a second on that?
I'll
Second.
second it.
Okay. Any discussion, or have we already taken care of the discussion? So we need a vote. Tracy, could you call a vote?
Counselor Anderson,
Yes.
Counselor Katerina,
No,
Counselor Johnson.
Yes. Okay, so we're down to 2. So now I think we should discuss next steps with the 2. Now, let me preface this with just a couple things. And again, this is only my thoughts. I'm only one person of 3 and one of however many number. I know the council is generally thinking of taking July off.
yeah,
I understand there are certain committee members that would like to take July off, that I have no problem with that, as long as we can, as a committee, agree that if an individual or a couple of members want to still pursue, just investigating, no decisioning, because I don't support out of a 3-person committee decisioning on 2. Okay, so the decisioning, even if we got to call somebody that's not around, the other 1 or 2 can pursue this through the month of July if staff is available. Because
Mr. Chair,
yes,
I can be available in July, but it would be by Zoom.
okay,
Because I'm out on Peaks Island, but I am, my husband takes away all telephones, email, you know,
wise move.
whatever from me,
Yep.
August 1st to August 15th. So just so
Okay.
you know.
Okay, so I think there's a general agreement that we can pursue this through July if the opportunity and time allows. Good. No need for even further discussion on that. So, Liam, again, from your expertise and your almighty wisdom, I would think that next steps would be to have some type of in-person or Zoom, whatever meeting with the 2 candidates that we have remainder, both MDR and ETC, in some form to further explore what we're seeing on the RFP, to get either more comfortable and either, you know, support our feelings for those vendors or whatnot. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that's probably a good approach. Just to clarify, so you're out August 1 to the 15th on Peaks. So you're around in July, theoretically,
By Zoom,
by Zoom.
yes.
Okay. And I do believe, just to speak to the remote meeting piece, we will be bringing forward a policy to the council, which will allow for ongoing remote participation from in certain instances. So
Right.
I do think that there's a possibility there. I guess what I would propose, Ken, is maybe sometime over the next week, we develop a Google Doc and committee members can populate questions that they have.
Okay.
And that'll give us, again, some more time to digest everything.
Yep.
And then maybe we can set up a meeting, individual meetings with each one of these consultants over Zoom and go through those questions. And then we can make a final decision maybe sometime before the end of July. I mean, I think one of the things that has been helpful with reviewing these RFPs is getting a sense of those timelines, anywhere from 12 to 15 or 16 weeks, which means that, presuming we bring something forward, a recommendation to the council, maybe in August at their meeting, we can do all the work between now and then.
Yep.
We'll still have time to get it done in the fall.
Right.
It will just be a question of, do we want it done before the election, or is it fine getting most of it done before the election, and then the results and report will be issued shortly thereafter, which may make sense from the council.
Yeah. And we can vet that as we move forward, but you're right. I think we still fall within, we still have some leeway to get it done before the end of the year. And
Are these surveyors aware that the elections in November, the local election and whatever, because it may or may not make a difference to them?
that would be good. I think a good topic of discussion.
Yeah.
Because I would think any vendor that has done municipalities before should have certain insights to that.
Right.
So
Because a lot of municipalities have their elections in May or June.
Right.
So
what I might recommend is over the next, again, maybe week or so, we get our questions distilled. Do we want to plan on meeting on our regular scheduled date of the second Monday, which would be July 12th?
Yep.
And maybe we can set up, if those vendors are available, maybe 45-minute meetings with either one back to back. And I also think that, in terms of the timing, I think that this is clearly an initiative, one way or the other, of this sitting council. I think getting a final report and results back after the election for the new council, I think, will serve to inform maybe some goal setting for the new council. That actually work pretty well from a timing
standpoint. I think the timing on that's why I was kind of glad to see the 12 to 15 weeks. I figured as long as we didn't lose July, we should be in good shape in mid to late fall, post-election, and I agree. Because then you got a new council coming in, whether it's same people or not, still a new council. And you have in front of you all kinds of information for decisions you're going to be making when you're seated. So, perfect.
Right.
Now, Liam, if you don't mind, sometimes, you just need to ask the question. So I'm going to apologize up front.
Ask away.
This is because I pondered this just for a minute, but I want, you're the rock.
The big lead in here, Ken.
I know.
You're the rock. So the ethicalness of it, the morality of it, and whether it's down outright shouldn't do this. Is there any way that ARP money could be used to help support, not fund, but support this survey? Because I would think we would want to know, how did we do for COVID? What could we do better as a result of the experience with COVID? We could actually loop in, whether ARP is there or not. I'm thinking we should have some kind of category, not a long list of questions, but how did we do with COVID? Things like that. So give that some thought, because I think maybe we might be able to drive the price down a little bit.
Yeah, let's give that some thought. I mean, I that's something that, we obviously came into this process thinking we want to know how we're doing municipal services and growth and development and all those other kind of burning questions that. But is there an opportunity to solicit some community feedback on maybe changes to municipal services in response to COVID, or how we performed during COVID and that engagement piece?
What could we have done better?
Maybe if there's a link there, maybe that is something that we can link to some ARPA funds to that between.
Just as a thought.
Yeah, I think it's a good thought. I hadn't thought of it.
Just as a thought.
And another thought is that even if we can't use the funds, can we put the funds in someplace else? In other words, rob Peter to pay Paul. In other words, money that can go to something else, and we can take that money and put it into the survey. Am I making sense here?
Yeah.
Supplant funding in another line with ARPA funds that free up some bottom line. Yeah. Yeah.
And again, based on the discussions we have in the next steps with the MDR, I really think if we have the discussion about leveraging what we, again, remember, Liam, we started this a long time ago. We're trying to at least pull the the instrument, the survey instrument out of that services document, which can't, it's 1,000 pages, you just can't do it. But they will have that. They said they had it. So there might be some savings there. Anyway, that will come with the next discussion. That's just a thought. So if we think we're done with that item, I'm going to say thank you very much. I think we do have the next steps. And we just moved to item number 5. And item number 5, I have to apologize again, is the e-news and the leader topics for Jill. Here we go. Just to give folks a heads up, committee members heads up, we've committed as a committee, and I definitely have personally, to always have topics for e-news and the leader. And I failed in my responsibility. Why? Okay. The thought was I was gonna do something on traffic and to dovetail it into our Wednesday workshop with the Downs on the TMP. And my personal life just blew up with work. That's all, and I didn't make it. So I got a hold of the editor, explained that I missed the calendar, and she gave me a grace period because that relationship's delicate and I don't want to abuse it or take it for advantage because they count on us contributing to their newspaper. So what we're going to do is delay that to the 15th, which gives us till next Thursday for the topic, for the leader. And it's going to be about traffic with a lot of help from Allison because she's coming up with a traffic communication plan. We know, again, we go out and talk to our residents. What do they tell you? The number one issue, if they can get past the growth thing, it's the traffic, right? It's the traffic that reminds them of the growth. So it's a very important topic that we do it right with a coordinated effort, working with Allison with In the Know, the web, the e-news, and the leader. So we've deferred that to the 15th. So that one's set for the 15th. The challenge is the first e-news, which is the first. When do you need that, Allison? I mean, today is the 29th.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter. Just
There's
just
no
before
excuse for it.
just by Thursday morning. But yeah,
What's
I'm trying to give you
today?
as much time as possible. Yeah.
Do you happen to have anything that's got a core to it that I can embellish, run around and put John Anderson's name on?
Well, I was gonna say, if someone wanted to give me something drafted, that's already drafted, I'm happy to run with a draft and
I don't even have a draft.
it takes me 2 seconds to,
And you do that very well, effortlessly. You're like the athlete, that
I used to do it for.
I struggle. I wordsmith, I lose sleep, I redo it.
So this is for the July 1st Counselor Corner.
In the e-news. Yeah.
So maybe one angle I could maybe take to draft something would be, because it kind of ties into it a little bit, or maybe it's too tangential, but I could give an update on what happened at the downtown committee where we had the consultant share, a little bit more clearly what the vision is going to look like. And then clearly traffic and enabling, people to come to the downtown will be critical to really create the vibrant, area we want it to be. So I'm just like, that might be an angle I could take to try and say, let's give an update on what's happened with the downtown at this point, where we are. And,
Yeah, that could
trying to-
segue. Then
Yeah.
that could segue into the
Yeah.
15th.
Into the
Which-
traffic.
Yeah, with the traffic and the workshop and with the link,
Yeah.
to go to see the workshop and everything. John, if you could do that,
Mhm.
I'll buy you lunch all next week.
I want Ty.
On
I want
your
Ty.
credit card.
Oh, you can take me to that new place you guys were looking at down
Here.
by
Keenan or whatever it is, because with K.
Which one?
yeah,
Keenan,
the sushi
Yeah,
place,
supposed to
or
be good. That's supposed
Yeah,
to be
we'll talk offline on that.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I can-
That's what we're gonna talk offline about.
Yeah, I'll do that for you. No. We'll talk offline.
I'll draft some, I'll get something to you,
Thank you very much.
Allison, hopefully
I promise you,
tonight or tomorrow.
never put you on the
Okay.
spot like that again. I know I probably promised before, but I never will.
Yeah,
So,
and I'm a witness to that, Jonathan.
yes, you call me out on it. So I would think then, again, because the topics are for July, July until when, I think, Allison, you're actually doing probably a somewhat tight formalized communication plan, very similar to what you do with budget. Because this is a very, not only that, it's a very important topic, but we have an awful lot of good things going on around traffic. And it's truly, our responsibility to communicate that. And if we don't, then that's on us. So I would think July, maybe even into August, first one will be traffic related.
Okay.
So the initial dovetail in from John on the downtown committee with traffic will segue into July 15th, which might be the bigger start of it. And then we could trail for probably a couple issues, e-news and maybe one more newsletter. So does that sound reasonable?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is Liam awake?
I am.
Okay.
Always.
He's
Well, thank you very much.
multi-
Thank you very much. Item number 6, any public comment? Do we have any public comment?
Everyone's on YouTube.
Okay. Item number 7, future agenda items. I do believe it's all going to be survey related.
Yes.
So we'll wait to hear from Liam. I'm assuming you'll reach out to those 2 vendors to see what their availability is. And it'd be nice if they dovetail into whatever date you mentioned in July.
Yeah,
And we're going to make sure to give Jean Marie enough lead time.
Yeah.
And she'll zoom in. We might all be zooming in based on whatever the policy is, right?
Yeah, and I did start a document with questions if you all want to go in and populate the questions you have.
Please do. Yeah, give us access. Give us access to it.
You already have it. And then if we could have those questions done by maybe mid next week.
Yep.
That way, I'll reach out to the vendors tomorrow to find out their availability for the 12th, but then we can give them some lead time to be prepared to answer some of those questions.
Yep. Sounds good. Thank you very much. I'm really excited about the survey. I really am.
Me too.
And
Well, you were
By the
the
way-
one that really pushed it. You were the one who's really been behind it. So I thank you for doing that, because that wasn't top of mind for me, but I think it makes perfect sense given.
I just have the energy. I don't have the skills to get it done, but I got and the way that my MO is that if I become a bigger pain in the you-know-what, then maybe other people will do something to get rid of that. By the way, I'll mention it everybody remembers we have a council meeting tomorrow at 6. Allison has done a great job in designing a little postcard, Be Informed, for us to be able to, do you have that in front of you, Allison? Because I don't think John saw it. John came in a little late. Yep. What it does is it directs folks to the website, or they can take it, put their name in, their email, and mail it back, and we'll sign them up. I've already done that. I was telling Allison earlier, I gave out 3. I actually signed 1 up. 2 people took it with them. If I would have had stamps, I would have put the stamps on, but anyway, I think it's great. So hoping I'm gonna let the town council know, and it'd be great if everybody could take maybe 100. They fit perfectly in my back pocket. I actually even went for a couple car rides to make sure it didn't damage them. So they're with me all the time. And when I stop and talk with people, I'm gonna whip them out, because I talk to people all the time. I'm not shy.
Can
Ken,
I?
are you approaching strangers at gas pumps?
Yes, I asked the first thing I say, you're a Scarborough resident? Yes.
Oh my God.
Do you subscribe to your newsletter? What's that? Oh, on a side note, before we adjourn, Allison, maybe you have some insight to this or not. By the way, I had my association annual meeting at the new public safety building. I had, there's 37 houses in there, about 70 people. I think we had 62 people show up. They love the building, and I was the star because I had, an 80-inch TV drop out of the ceiling. And,
So,
and I had just spreadsheets and documents, but
tricks.
everybody could see it and everything. But out of that, because we were there a couple hours, we had a couple of discussions with several people mentioned to me, they do not get the leader. They always used to, but they do not get it anymore.
Huh.
So I don't know if that's a function of the leader, the number of prints, or is it the post office? Because the post office delivers it. It used to be the newspaper. Now it's the post office. So any ideas on where to explore where, because
It would be the post office because they have some sort of agreement with the post office to
Right.
deliver it. So if people are not getting their
so
mail,
maybe the carrier's running out. Yeah, maybe he's
Or-
not getting enough.
I don't get mine every week either. It's annoying, but yeah, so it must be something at the post office. I can
Okay.
see.
Because I'll share with you, I had somebody come up to me in the meeting that's typically a critic in my neighborhood, which, you know, people are people, we get it, respect. How they raved about the communication that's been going on in the town, about the website, about the e-newsletter and the leader. She goes, I've been in town a lot of years. I used to get all my information from the leader, and now I find that I am doing that now. That's between the In the Know, the council, and the school. I think it's writing something, even though I haven't seen anything about the school yet. But
Yeah.
it's just, again, you know, paper medium is it's not dinosaur anymore. A lot of people like to go to the mailbox, get the leader, and read about it. So you think it might be the post office? Maybe I'll
Yeah.
go down and have a talk with the post
So
office.
Ken, when you go down to get stamps for all those postcards, and are you gonna? We have a Grinch costume if you want to throw it on and go stand in the media and get some people signed up.
I will do that.
You won't be the first Johnson to don that this month. So
We have the first concerts in the park Thursday.
Oh, there
I'm
you
gonna
go.
be talking everybody.
Yes, that would be perfect.
Get them on the e-news. And matter of fact, I may even create a little stand and say free popcorn to the first 50 people that sign up.
Ooh.
Right? You never know.
I think you need a permit for that.
Anyway, I'm sorry, I digress. Item number 8 is the
Well,
adjournment.
when you get postcards back, somehow get them to me and I'll manually enter them for the
Okay.
newsletter.
Yeah, what I did was the one today that she filled out in front of me, I entered it and then destroyed the postcard. Because I told her that's what I would do. I would get rid of the postcard.
Okay, perfect.
Okay?
Yeah, if you want
I
to
should
mail
have
them
talked
to
to you
me.
about it.
Yeah,
but I just don't want anybody to think that we're keeping their information for.
right.
Already have their information if they're registered to vote.
Well, yeah, but a lot of people don't even know that's public information. So,
Oh, for the love of Pete.
so item number 8 is adjournment. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? John just second, he's on mute. Tracy?
And
Council Anderson,
yes.
Council Katerina,
Yes.
Council Johnson.
Yes, I want to thank